All right, welcome to Talking Investing. I'm Tom. As always, this is not financial advice. Today, we're going to go through Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners weekly update. We're going to go through all the charts for last week, year to date. We also want to talk about what happened with Bitcoin over the weekend. There was some big news last week that I think impacted the market as well as Bitcoin. So we'll just briefly touch on that as well. We're going to go through all of our normal charts, and later in the video, we are going to go through a chart of Bitcoin itself. And I want to take a look at some of the technicals because it looks like we could be on the brink of a little bit of a breakout. But I want to be careful to call that too soon. I hear a lot of people screaming breakout, but we're going to take a look at a few things that I'm looking at before I feel confident that we can call this a breakout. But in the meantime, we've certainly been heading in the right direction. So before we get going, remember to smash the like button. It does help the channel out a lot. And of course, if you have not yet subscribed, please consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the notification bell. We talk about Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners all the time. We just got to the Bitcoin halving. We're still very early here in this cycle. So if this is content that you're interested in, if you want to see where Bitcoin's going next, remember to stay tuned. Okay, let's go through our charts. All right, so this is the week over week. And again, this is as of last Friday. So you're going to see last week, the Bitcoin miners did struggle with one exception. We had a couple of weeks in a row where the Bitcoin miners were outperforming Bitcoin. That trend stopped last week. I believe it was not a stop. I believe it was more of a pause. I think we're going to get back onto that track, but obviously we need to wait and see. We're going to take a look at that chart in a minute. First, let's take a look at what happened last week. So you're going to see DigiHost was up 14%. That was the only Bitcoin miner in the green. I think that was a bit of an anomaly. Next in line, you're going to see in gold, Bitcoin, as always, Bitcoin was down 3% on the week. So it was a tough week for Bitcoin last week. And that actually includes a little bit of a rally near the end of the week. In the middle of the week last week, we really had a tough time for Bitcoin. We broke outside of our trading range to the downside. We'll take a look at that later. And you'll see the Bitcoin miners suffered for it. There were a few that were fairly close to Bitcoin. Stronghold down 4%, Core Scientific down 4%, Bit Digital 4%, DMG 5%. But then you can see things get progressively worse all the way down to Hive was down 20% last week. That was at the bottom of the list. CleanSpark, which still really is the outperformer on the year by far. CleanSpark had a tough week, down 16% last week. CleanSpark is the second largest Bitcoin miner by market cap. Riot is the third largest by market cap, and they were down 13%. And then Marathon, the largest by market cap, they were down 10%. So you're going to see a lot of these Bitcoin miners were down between 10 and 20% last week. On a week where Bitcoin was down 3%, so that was underperformance compared to Bitcoin. So this was a tough week last week. The next chart I want to look at is the last 2.5 weeks, so just under 3 weeks. You're going to see on this channel, we called a local bottom on April 16th. That is still holding despite the fact that last week was a bad week. So almost all the Bitcoin miners put in a local bottom somewhere around April 16th. For a few of them, it was April 17th. So we're measuring from that point. That's now 2.5 weeks ago. So despite the fact that last week was a bad week, you're going to see this entire chart, with one exception, is still in the green, which means all the Bitcoin miners except one, 18 of the 19 Bitcoin miners that we follow, are outperforming Bitcoin over the last 2.5 weeks. You're going to see at the top of the list, Stronghold, which is a nano cap stock. They are up 104% in that time frame. Stronghold did come out with their quarterly results, and in their quarterly results, they talked about the fact that they are looking to sell the business. So they had a gigantic boost on that. You'll see up over 100% in just a couple of weeks. But there are several other strong performers in this period of time. Mawson is up 51%. That's another small cap. DigiHost up 41%. That's another micro cap stock. So at the top of this list are some micro cap stocks, but then we get into some larger stocks. Riot, like we said, is the third largest by market cap. They're up 32% in the last 2.5 weeks, so that's a nice move by Riot. Core Scientific, which is one of the largest, in fact, they mine the most Bitcoin by month each of the last 2 months in a row. They were up 26%. Cypher was up 25%. Marathon, which is the largest by market cap, up 23%. So you're going to see this is all in a time frame where in the last 2.5 weeks, Bitcoin is actually down 1%. So the Bitcoin miners in a 2.5 week period have done some big time catching up compared to Bitcoin. but last week was a little bit of a pause. Last week was a tough week. We're going to keep our eye on this chart. I do think these local lows on April 16th are going to hold in the meantime, unless, of course, Bitcoin has a major break to the downside. Okay, then if we go to year to date, this is going to become clear. There's really just one Bitcoin miner that has performed well this year. It's been neck and neck with Bitcoin all year, and that is CleanSpark. So as of last Friday, Bitcoin was up 48%, CleanSpark was up 46%. These two have been flip-flopping first and second place all year long. Third place has been a distant third for most of the year. There's been no other Bitcoin miners in the green year to date. Cypher, even after the tough week last week, they are still at 0%, so technically I'm calling them in the green. TerraWolf moved from the green to the red last week with the big pullback. Then again, to hit some of the bigger ones, Marathon, the largest by market cap, they're down 25% year to date. Riot's down 33% year to date. So, and remember, that's against Bitcoin, which is up 48% year to date. So far, the Bitcoin miners still lagging dramatically behind Bitcoin. We were hoping to get some momentum. We still, over a 2.5 week period, are looking good, but last week was another rough week for the Bitcoin miners. There's 5 Bitcoin miners that are down between 54 and 69%. I think the market is very worried about those 5 Bitcoin miners. We have been talking about those 5 for about 6 or 8 months now. We are now after the halving, and basically we've been saying the market, and myself included, are worried about these companies. Not necessarily that they're going to go out of business. And of course, please remember, this is not financial advice, right? This is just my thoughts, and obviously it's the market's thoughts as these stocks have been getting beat up. But there could be opportunities in here somewhere. So as always, please do your own due diligence as you invest in any of these stocks or even consider investing. These are extremely volatile stocks as these charts are showing. So please be very careful. Do your own due diligence. That's a look year to date. You're going to see most of the Bitcoin miners are still down between 30 and 50% year to date. Again, CleanSpark, the big outlier, they are up 46% year to date. And this is not a coincidence. CleanSpark added 7 exahash to their overall operations in the first 3 months of the year. They were able to dramatically increase the amount of Bitcoin they mined. They added a significant amount of Bitcoin to their balance sheet. There's 7 other Bitcoin miners that do have pretty big growth plans in the year 2024. So I do think as those companies start to build out and realize their expansion plans, I think the market is going to reward them. But one of the things I think we're seeing is the market is in a wait and see situation. A lot of these companies have talked about big growth plans in the year 2024, but I believe that the market for a lot of them wants to see it to believe it. For a lot of the Bitcoin miners, it's really going to be about execution for the rest of the year. Can they implement their growth plans? And when they do implement their growth plans, can they efficiently mine Bitcoin? So we're going to have to wait and see as the year goes on. But I do think you're going to see some massive growth from an exahash standpoint for several of these Bitcoin miners. There are 7 Bitcoin miners that are expecting to get to 20 or more exahash sometime in the next 12 months. That's why I'm keeping such a close eye on this industry. There is a lot of potential growth ahead, and I do think some of these stocks will have a nice breakout in the year 2024 into the year 2025 as well. So again, that's just my opinion, not financial advice. Okay, quickly, we'll take a look at this chart. This is comparing Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners as of last Friday versus November of 2021. That is the last time that Bitcoin peaked in the previous bull market cycle. So in November of 2021, Bitcoin hit $69,000. We have gone above that now. Bitcoin did get up to $74,000 last month, but it has pulled back. So as of last Friday, Bitcoin was down 10% versus its highs from the previous bull market. The Bitcoin miners have not fared nearly as well. The closest Bitcoin miner to that is CleanSpark, once again in the lead, down 32%. Then you've got Cypher down 59%. Then it drops down into the 70s. You've got DMG Blockchain, which is a nano cap, down 73%. Then you've got some of the big names, Riot and Marathon in particular. That is the first and third largest by market cap. They are down 78 and 79% respectively. This is very similar to where they were at this point in the previous cycle. So in the last bull market at the halving, Riot and Marathon were down approximately 80% from their highs from the previous cycle. So at the moment, they seem to be behaving very similarly. We'll see if that plays out. Now, last time around, they made a big run and actually got to new all-time highs. So that remains to be seen. You can see there's obviously an awful lot of space between there and a new all-time high. So once again, this is another chart where if you take a look at this, there's 8 Bitcoin miners still down between 90 and 99%, 4 Bitcoin miners down between 98 and 99%. Once again, I do think the market is worried about some of these at the bottom of this list. I am not expecting any of these Bitcoin miners that are down 98 or 99% to retake their previous all-time highs. In fact, some of these companies I do think are going to struggle. We've been saying on this channel now for 18 months. I think there's going to be winners and losers inside of this space, so it's all the more reason to be extra careful, do your own due diligence, and choose wisely, because I do think there's going to be a big discrepancy between the winners and the losers in this space. We're already seeing that. Taking a look at what the major indexes did last week, this is the 4 major U.S. indexes. In addition to that, the 2 largest commodities, which are silver and gold, and the 2 largest cryptocurrencies, which are Bitcoin and Ethereum. So we've been comparing this on a weekly basis. You're going to see the 4 major indexes were in the green last week. The commodities and the cryptocurrencies were in the red. And there's a reason for that. We did get 2 pieces of information last week. The Fed came out last week, and as expected, they did not raise or cut interest rates. So that was not a surprise. But Jerome Powell's speech afterward, I think, was very dovish compared to what people were expecting. He said a lot of what the market wanted to hear. So I do think that that speech represented a reversal in the market. Also, the cryptocurrencies did reverse as well. Even though they were still in the red by the end of the week, Bitcoin itself did jump in a big way simultaneous with Jerome Powell's speech. Now, it did pull back a little bit after that, but then we had another data point on Friday. We had the jobs report. Jobs came in weak. Unemployment went up. It ticked up from 3.8% to 3.9%. That was unexpected. So while that is bad news in general, the market's taking that as good news, because a bad jobs report increases the probability that the Fed will lower rates sooner than the market expected. So we saw the market jump on that news in a big way. We saw Bitcoin really skyrocket on Friday, right simultaneous with the announcement of the jobs report, and it ran up for the rest of the entire day. It really broke out of the range it was trading into the downside, and we're going to take a look at that chart next, because we're going to see if that was the first leg up to Bitcoin maybe getting healthy again and taking a run back at its all-time high that it reached in the middle of March. Okay, so that leads me to the Bitcoin chart. This is Bitcoin on the 1-day time frame. We've been eyeing a few specific things on this chart, a few things that we were looking for and hoping for. Friday on my live stream in specific, we were hoping that we could get a daily candle that closed above this red line, and this red line is at $61,900. This was a very strong line of support that started on March 2nd. It held up for almost 2 months. We did break to the downside. I do think the ETF outflows had a lot to do with that. They had a very bad week last week, but on Friday there was a big reversal. So you can see on Tuesday of last week, we had a big red candle and we broke below this line of support. So from there, as soon as we broke below this, as often is the case, as soon as we break below a line of support or above a line of support, Bitcoin starts to run in whatever direction it's headed in. So you can see that is what happened. It ran down into the middle of this box. This is a box we've been looking at for a few months. This represents a 20% pullback on the top of this box and a 25% pullback on the bottom of this box from Bitcoin's new all-time high that it set last month, which is this purple line up here, just under $74,000. So we've been talking about the fact that we haven't quite had a full 20% pullback. The standard pullback over the last 18 months has been between 20 and 23% to the downside. Prior to last week, we were stuck at 19%, and that sounds close enough, but so often when we get close to a line, we end up eventually gravitating to that line, and that is what happened. So we did spend 2 days inside of this box. We did get down to that 23% pullback. That happened on Wednesday, and you'll see we have a candle wick to the downside on Wednesday because in the middle of the day Wednesday, when Jerome Powell spoke, Bitcoin began to rally. We had a green day on Thursday, and then on Friday, you're going to see a giant green candle. That is when the job numbers came out in the US, so that was a giant catalyst for not only the market, but for Bitcoin as well. So you can see we traded all the way up back above this line of support. What I had been talking about on the channel is I wanted to get quickly back above this line of support before we turned it into a line of resistance. And we were hanging out around this line for several hours on Friday. We did break through it before the end of the day. We closed well above that. And then Saturday and Sunday were green candles as well. So it looks to me like we're back in our old trading range. So that is a nice move to the upside, but that's why I say I will wait and see as to whether or not this is an actual breakout and the rally will continue. The first thing I'll say is it looks like we're holding this line of support. We're back above that. We're back into our old trading range, which for me I consider between 62,000 at the bottom and 71,000 at the top, which is this green line. The other thing that we were looking for is we've had a descending line of resistance on the daily RSI, and you can see this has been going on all the way again since the beginning of March. So we've had a big pullback. We went from very, very overbought all the way up near 86 on the daily RSI, which is significantly overbought. And you can see we got very close to a full reset. We got down to about 33 or 34 on the daily RSI. The other important thing is you'll see on Friday, the RSI had a big move to the upside, and it did break out of this descending line of resistance. We've had a couple of fake outs, but this one appears to be a much stronger breakout. It's now several days later. We are still above this, but you're going to see we have a blue line at 50. That is neutral on the daily RSI. So we always say on this channel that good things happen for Bitcoin above 50 on the daily RSI. We are bumping into this as resistance. So that's the last piece of the puzzle that I'm going to be looking for. Can we break above 50 on the daily RSI? If we can, then I do think we're going to have a run potentially all the way back up to the top of our trading range, which is somewhere in the $71,000 area. If not, if this turns into resistance and we can't break through, then I think we'll continue to bounce around closer to the bottom of this trading range where we're at right now, somewhere between $62,000 and $64,000. The other thing that I think is worth noting is we have been looking at the MACD for the last 2 months. And you're going to see we've had 50 days on the histogram here that were in the red. That is the longest streak that I could find over the last several years. Now, inside of that streak, we had three basically what I would call fake outs. We had 3 times where it looked like we had massive momentum heading towards a bullish crossover on the MACD, but we fell short each of the 3 times. This 4th time, we did end up getting a bullish crossover. You'll see that right here, and you'll see that is when the histogram turned green. So Sunday was a daily candle that closed, and that closed green on the histogram. That is the first time in over 50 days. We are now in the green today, but it's very early in the day as I'm making this video, so we will see. We want to see if we can build some momentum on the histogram and start to get some larger candles. So that's what we'll be looking for. Can we cross 50 on the daily RSI? Can we start to get some momentum on the MACD with some larger green candles? And last but not least, we want to stay above this line here at $61,900, which was our line of support. That will keep us in our old trading range. So those are the things that I'm going to be looking for Bitcoin in the short term. Again, a couple of those, if they happen, I do think will confirm that we're about to have maybe a breakout back up to the top side of the current range that we're in. So that's where I think Bitcoin sits right now. So we'll keep a close eye on this. Obviously, more videos to come. So if you made it this far, thanks so much for watching. Please remember to smash the like button and subscribe to the channel. Thanks again, and we will see you in the next video.